Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we're two brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina, grab a drink, and settle in as we set course for reality beyond our own. ASMR time.
Is that what people want for ASMR? A loud crack popple from you opening a can?
I don't know what the people want.
Pretty sure they want me to whisper sweet nothings into the microphone. Take a page out of Cotton Candy Randy and... You want some sweet nothings, daddies?
Oh, I hate Cotton Candy Randy.
Yeah,
gross.
All right, guys, welcome to the episode. This is episode 18. Today we're going to be discussing Bad Batch episode 6 of season 2. This is episode called Tribe. But first, let's begin with our starter questions. Also, stick around towards the end. We're going to be talking about some Warhammer news as well.
It's time for our starter questions. What have you been watching recently?
I am fully caught up on The Last of Us by this point and The Bad Batch. So this episode is going to be coming out on... Hold on. Calendar. Is going to be coming out on March 6th. So by this point, another episode will have come out. I believe we'll be on episode 11. You guys know that we do these with a sufficient enough delay so you guys don't get spoilers. So we won't go too much into that. The wife and I have also been watching Blood Origins on Netflix. This is actually a Witcher prequel, and it's not bad. It's a mini-series of 4 different episodes, and it's a really fun watch. I would give it a mini review score of 7 out of 10. It's really good fantasy.
Okay.
It's in the Witcher IP. Really enjoyed it. It was a good dinner time watch. So, and this isn't like watching per se, but I have been listening through the X-Wing series from Star Wars Legends, and I am almost done with the book, The Back to War. Really enjoying it so far. Would love to talk about Rogue Squadron some more in an episode and like really dive deep because they need more content. But yeah, that's what I've been going over. What about you?
So that's actually a good point, though. Going through books is... I don't have a lot to update on what shows I've been watching. Mostly just been finishing up The Last of Us. We've also been watching Chernobyl, which is very good. Also very sad because radiation poisoning looks very painful. But I also recently just saw Ant-Man Quantumania. It's fine. Along with a lot of my other reviews of Marvel content, it's fine. We really haven't seen something as with such high stakes and so engrossing as Infinity War and Endgame since those movies came out. It makes me wonder, like, how is Marvel going to rebound and get better? Like, DC hopefully is going to have a huge turnaround, so there's always that to look forward to. But I'm not as amped when new Marvel stuff comes out, which, you know, I'm hopeful they can turn things around.
Absolutely. We'll see. What games have you been playing?
It's so weird because we record 2 episodes of podcasts at a time. So when you asked me this question an hour ago, nothing has changed. One game that I'm really still playing on my mobile device a lot. And I tried streaming this for a little bit, but I realized that I don't have the bandwidth to stream. And by that, I mean, the only time I could stream on my own personal Twitch channel was at 9 p.m. at night, and I would go to like 11 p.m. Well, I'm usually asleep by 8:45, so that was not a great fit for me. So I'm not really streaming anymore.
That's fair.
But I've been playing Marvel Snap, which has been really fun. Right now, we're kind of in a shorter season going through. It's like a Quantumania-based season. I bought the last season pass, which was the Savage Lands season, and I got a lot of value out of that. This season, I'm just like, I do not care. Like, the MODOK card, it's just not that good. I don't really like discard decks. I know people get a lot of mileage out of them, but it's not really my cup of tea. So
the discard deck is super meta right now. I see so many people playing it, and it's kind of annoying because once I start seeing them play certain cards in order, I've actually gotten to the point where I know, I'm like, okay, if they play Dracula here, if they play MODOK here, or if they are like, if they're Lady Sif like kills their apocalypse, and like he comes back and like gains a bunch of power. I know certain points where I'm just like, if I see certain card orders, I'm retreating immediately because I know that I can't match the power output. Like, even if everything went perfectly, I play actually what I call a mega move deck. So basically a Heimdall finisher with cards like Vulture, Multiple Man, different cards like that. And
which is also a very predictable deck.
It is.
Like,
so
it's going to end to the left section because that's the direction Heimdall pushes everything. So if you just load your guys up on the right, you can actually beat a mega move deck pretty easily. Well, sometimes.
You only have to take one of those sections because 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to have anything or anything of substance in that right section. I'll go into what I've been playing. I have been working a lot on my Minecraft worlds. I've been filling in a lot of holes with dirt, mostly this like boring stuff that people don't want to see on stream. Call of Duty Mobile came out with a new game mode. It's like a Goliath battle. So basically, what?
Plug our Let's Play.
Dude, that's like sex.
No, it's not. That's plug. It's like this is your plug and this is your outlet.
This is
plug.
This is the universal hand signal for penetration. Oh my gosh. Why are you like this? Only an engineer would be like, it's a plug, man. Didn't you get it?
We have a Minecraft Let's Play. Please watch it. We had a lot of fun making it.
It was really fun. We're planning on doing more. We're actually hoping to get some recording done today. It's been a good time. I've also been playing some StarCraft 2. Really looking forward to get that new PC so I can play more games. What hobby work have you been getting done?
So little. I'm mostly just waiting for some new. It's not new. I bought some stuff off eBay. I'm waiting for that to come in the mail so I can finish off my 2,000 point army for our game in a couple weekends.
Yeah. That's going to be amazing. I officially got all of my Mega Knobs fully magnetized, and I got all my new models base magnetized, so now I can stick them onto metal trays and they don't move. I know that's like a really small thing and it's not game important, but
that's a big thing.
Huge shout out, Hoplite Games. If you sponsor me, I will literally love you forever. Hoplite Games, or Hoplite Games Workshop, Game Studios. Oh my gosh, I'm ruining it already. They're not going to plug me.
You can do this.
Hoplite Game Studios is an Etsy seller that sells Warhammer proxies. And one of my favorite features is their base comes with a magnet hole on the bottom, and it's already raised to the point, or I guess lowered to the point where all you have to do is put one magnet on and it's completely flush with the bottom of the base. And it gives you, and it has the dimension, it's embossed. Thank you. And it has the dimensions of the hole in there as well. So it's a 5x1 millimeter magnet. And if you put that in there, it will fit perfectly. So it tells you exactly what kind of magnet you need in the base plate. And it's amazing. It's a game changer. I wish all of the model bases had this because it's super easy to implement and I love it. Thank you, Hoplite Games. Love you guys. I plan on buying more models from them.
As an engineer, I really love a well-dimensioned hole.
You're killing me, man. Guys, we are going to have some dank blooper videos from this episode. It's going to be great. So it's going to be good. All right, guys, we're going to like collect ourselves. We're going to have a good time. We're going to get into
I most certainly will not collect myself. I'm reading through some of your notes. You wook.
Stop.
Why are you like this? Nathan writes, I love me some wook. I am half tempted to just end this recording right here, right now. You don't get to talk to me about being such a weirdo and then write that.
I may have written these notes whilst drinking rum and coke.
Ooh, rum and root beer, also very good. Anyway.
Very good. Let me give our spoiler warning and then we'll go into it. All right, guys.
Gosh.
Okay, so we're gonna go and we're gonna talk about this episode. This is episode 6, excuse me, of Bad Batch Season 2 Tribe. This is your spoiler warning. If you have not watched it and you don't want to hear spoilers, now is your time to get out. You've been warned.
Get out!
Andrew, go ahead and lead us in with your rating of 1 to 10.
So I gave this a 7 out of 10, which is very good for what I would consider still a... it's hard to call this one a filler episode because the plight of the Wookiees has really been, well, one, immortalized in meme culture, but also the Wookiees are one of the most fascinating species in Star Wars. And if we had an entire season of Bad Batch just about the conflict and maybe even the liberation of the Wookiee homeworld Kashyyyk, I would be more than thrilled. You spend a significant amount of time on this planet in games like Republic Commando, Knights of the Old Republic, and then even as recently as Jedi Fallen Order. The Wookiees are awesome. They are so cool.
Yeah, you get some really, really cool characters, huge diversity, and this is a culture that we get to see more and more of over time. And in every game iteration, there's always Wookiees. Like KOTOR has Wookiees, Battlefront, every single game that's ever featured Chewbacca, right? So you've got Wookiees in basically everywhere. And the interesting thing is like this is actually a pretty prolific species, but most of these creatures have been taken via slaves for the Empire. And we'll go into a little bit more about that in a bit, but I love the Wookiees. I won't say what I had written down because Andrew, I was going to say, I love me some Wook. I love these adorable killing machines. This episode gives us, again, a good insight into Wookiee culture. Would love a second helping. I gave this also a 7 out of 10.
Tell us what your favorite moment from this episode was.
My favorite episode is the same as yours. So Gungi is back. If you guys don't know who Gungi is, he makes an appearance in Star Wars The Clone Wars as a Wookiee youngling, and his lightsaber is made out of a Worship tree. That's so cool. Super creative. Love to see it. I want to see more Wookiee warriors in action. The Wookiees have been an iconic species literally from the beginning of the franchise. I want them to get fully fleshed out. I totally agree with what you said. If we got an entire just season arc based on like helping out the Wookiees, I'd be okay with it. I think this would be just absolutely A+ material. And there is a precedent for clone commandos helping out the Wookiees, aka the final mission arc in Republic Commando, the video game, where we get to see Delta Squad push their way through Kashyyyk, fighting droids, helping Wookiees, and I think that would be really cool to see some more of that.
And we've already seen one member of Delta Squad, Scorch, in Season 1 of the Bad Batch. He is the clone commando with the yellow and black armor. He is actually their explosives expert. But then also in the Republic Commando game, we see that Sev, he's got like blood on his armor. He's like lots of red handprints and stuff, which is funny because they fight droids who don't have blood. But he's their sniper, and you actually lose contact with him in the Battle of Kashyyyk. Is it Kashyyyk or Kashyyyk?
Well, we had one guy who commented on one of our things, and he was like, it's pronounced Kashyyyk, but here's the thing. Different producers and everybody says everything different inside the Star Wars universe. I was listening to a High Republic book, and there's one book that pronounces Marchion Ro as his name, and then another audiobook that says Marchion Ro. The audio... for some reason, they decided, oh, yeah, the pronunciation of the main villain's name is not important. And so, you know what? Pronounce it how you want, because we have evidence of everyone pronouncing everything the way that they want. So I've always pronounced it Kashyyyk.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we see that in the real world, though. People pronounce words differently all the time. Constantly, when Sarah and I are watching like British television, I'm giggling to myself because they pronounce words so differently than us.
Yes, they do. We do love ourselves some British TV.
Yeah. Anytime we watch The Sorcerer's Stone and Hagrid comes in, he goes, "You're a wizard, Harry." And he goes, "I'm a what?" I crack up. I don't know why, but he's just like, "I'm a what?" And it's the funniest thing in my head. It's so dumb. But okay. back on track. Let's put this train back on the rails. Probably shouldn't talk about train derailments because of that disaster that just recently happened. I'm so sorry. Anyway, one of my favorite moments from this episode was Gunji. And also I really liked this episode because for a really dark reason, in that like slavery is a really naturally compelling story. We see that the stakes are incredibly high. We see the Wookiees fighting for their survival. It like slavery, it like violates this sense in our humanity. And it also shows exactly how evil the Empire is. And I think this kind of storytelling is really important to raising the stakes for the Bad Batch. Like, because Hunter, we see Hunter have this like, hey, I just want to like lay low and survive. But then we see Omega, who is like, you have to do more, you have to do more, you have to do more. We've seen how evil the Empire is, and we can't stand by and do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She's making herself into a good rebel.
Yeah.
What are your theories about the next episode? Or sorry, did you give your score out of 10?
Yeah, 7 out of 10. I think I wrote it twice, so I apologize.
No worries, no worries. What are your theories on the next episode, or kind of moving forward into the season?
Yeah, so like we said in our last episode, I'm kind of under the prevailing theory that the Bad Batch is going to kind of split and do their own thing. You don't agree, which it'll be interesting to see which one of us is right, or if either of us are right at all. But we see Wrecker really, really bond with the Wookiees, and I think this is going to be where his focus and attention goes, because with his augmented strength, he's essentially a Wookiee in his physical prowess.
Did you see what he does at the end of the episode? It's a very short blurt, but Wrecker speaks Shiriwook.
I must have missed that.
At the ending scene, he's sitting next to a Wookiee and he's speaking their native tongue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's big Wookiee energy there.
He loves the Wookiees. He fits in perfectly. Now, see, that's the thing. I don't agree with this theory. I don't think that's where it should end. But if it does, Wrecker would make a fantastic addition to a Wookiee village. Like 100% would fit in. Absolutely. My theory, though, moving forward, is that this is going off of the Mandalorian template. And what I mean by this is that we are essentially collecting all of these Chekhov's guns for later in the season. Just a huge armory of literary devices. And I think Gunji specifically is going to appear later in the season to help out the Bad Batch. I think this is them rallying the troops. If filler can be put to good use, if it comes back and helps us later in the season, because then it has more value. When you look back in hindsight, it makes it more valuable. So that's what I think is going to happen. That's what I hope is going to happen. Is that the most original idea? No, because they've already done this with The Mandalorian, and they've probably done this with literally thousands of TV shows beforehand, because it's a pretty simple template. But that's
essentially what the Avengers did.
Yeah, they just had all their separate movies, and then everyone just comes onto the scene in Avengers #1.
And it was awesome.
It was so cool. Gosh, that was crazy when that came out. So
yeah, it's very formulaic storytelling, but it's still fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Most stories follow a formula. If you know that, that's fine, but it's okay, because a lot of these formulas are inherently compelling. So.
Yeah, formulaic does not equal bad story.
Indeed.
It can make it very predictable and boring, but it doesn't have to be. So,
You have got some very excellent lore written down. I'm very excited for this. I want you to go through yours. I have got some lore as well, so this is going to be a lore-heavy episode. I'm very excited.
Did you know that one of the things that eventually exposed the construction of the first Death Star was the Wookiee slave trade, amongst other things like the massive flow of resources and wealth, like the transportation of kyber crystals and the metal in the Star Wars universe known as dunium. One of these individuals who managed to discover not only the existence of Project Stardust, but was able to uncover the true name of the Pew Pew Moon and the location in which it was being built was none other than Grand Admiral Thrawn. Don your tinfoil hats, everyone. We're talking about Thrawn again. Thrawn discovered this fact, and then during one of his valuable audiences with the Emperor, dared to bring up the existence to one of the strongest Sith Lords in 1,000 years. And he mentions it by name. He essentially says to the Emperor, I know about the Death Star. In this moment, I honestly thought that Thrawn was about to be strangled or just shocked into dust. But the Emperor instead takes this non-human into his confidences, further cementing Thrawn as one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy.
Thrawn is straight up a badass, plain and
Yes.
simple. I love how it always relates back to him. The fact that he is in this universe and playing a key pivotal role is amazing. Love to see some more blue-skinned baddies.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a fun fact that I totally forgot about that. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's in one of the Thrawn books, right?
That is in either the first or the second. I think it's actually the second Thrawn book.
Love to see it. Make sure you guys read those. They're really fun reads. I'm actually wanting to go back through and listen to those again.
Yeah, it's the book called Thrawn Allegiances by Timothy Zahn.
Timothy Zahn. What a champ. Love you, Timothy. Tim.
Thanks,
We're not
Tim.
We're not on a first name or even abbreviated name basis. Mr. Zahn. If
Thank you,
Mr. Zahn would like, everyone, if you are at this point in the episode, put in the comments, thank you, Timothy Zahn, because he's amazing and he has done more world building for the Star Wars universe than probably any other author. So, what I want to go over is some of the Wookiee warriors and some of their armaments. So, we get to see several Wookiee warriors help the Bad Batch defend their village. Don't rub your hands together. I got to cut that audio out.
I'm so sorry. I can't hear it myself. Sorry. I just get so excited because bowcasters are so cool.
I know. So we get to see several Wookiee warriors help out the Bad Batch defend their village. We don't get to see iconic Wookiees like Chewbacca or Tarful, but the village Gunji returns to seems to be well defended. Now, Wookiee warriors are the creators of the bowcaster, a crossbow-shaped weapon that packed a much greater punch than the standard Imperial blaster. The bowcaster worked by pulling the quarrel back between two polarized orbs, often only able to be done because of the strength of the Wookiee. After the quarrel is released, it would become immolated in plasma, discharging a powerful bolt into enemy ranks with great accuracy. So this weapon, first of all, could only be operated by Wookiees because they were like, yeah, we're strong enough to pull this back. It's fine. So a normal human can't pick this up, although it is... You see Han Solo use a bowcaster. He uses Chewie's bowcaster. It is also mentioned that Chewie has a modified bowcaster.
Yeah.
So it's easier to pull back. There's a few sources in there that I wasn't able to dig into, so keep that in mind. But it's more powerful and it's more accurate than standard blasters. For example, in the game Battlefront 2, you can play as an elite soldier, which is a Wookiee warrior, and they're often given a bowcaster which shoots explosive bolts of plasma and is also usually equipped with a thermal imploder. So I got you. So bowcasters couldn't be operated, a genuine Wookiee unmodified bowcaster couldn't be operated by a human. We do see Han Solo use a bowcaster. It's Chewbacca's bowcaster, which he's actually mentioned to have made several. This is a modified version where the strength is essentially there's an assistance tool to help pull back the quarrel, so that way it can actually be discharged. But this weapon has a ton of power in it, and also goes to credit the resilience of Kylo Ren, because Kylo Ren gets shot by one of these and survives. That's a good example of Sith hatred and the dark side holding somebody together, where a wound that would kill a normal person doesn't kill a dark side user because they're so filled with rage that the dark side empowers them to keep moving on. Because a normal bowcaster bolt would usually kill you. Wookiees are good at ripping off arms, and so are their weapons. So, like, the fact that he survives that is pretty impressive.
So I have a lore question for you. Can you block the bolt of a bowcaster with a lightsaber?
Yes, I think.
Because kind of what you're saying here is that it is a kinetic projectile sheathed in plasma.
It is I believe the quarrel doesn't leave the weapon. It goes to the front, and as it's traveling forwards, it
Oh,
takes the
okay.
plasma and then flings it off. So it's still a plasma projectile. So yes,
Okay.
they would be able to block it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's not a projectile,
These
because
are the
if it was a
things that people want to know.
well, because if it was a projectile, that's why scatter guns are so effective against Jedi, is because they can't block all of them. And
Yeah.
if the projectile is getting immolated on its way towards the Jedi, it's not getting deflected. So it's like, if you want to kill a Jedi, use a
Yeah.
shotgun. Ooh.
Yeah. Um, it would be interesting to see how. So a lightsaber has enough energy to melt through a door, right? I think if you were to shoot a solid round at a lightsaber, you could block it because I think it would be instantly vaporized. I think there would still be
Okay.
some threat that those vaporized gases would then get kind of shot into the Jedi's either face or body. But I don't think it would actually spray hot magma at the person. Like the round wouldn't disintegrate, turn into just liquid, and just kill the Jedi. I think it would be completely atomized. And I think with that, it's a lot of its momentum would be completely arrested. So I think, in my opinion, I think lightsabers can block kinetic projectiles. But like you said, they can't block a shotgun. you
Yeah,
know?
because they can't, like, you can't physically take that blade through every shot that's going through, because especially since those shots are actually slightly different distances based on how they're
Mhm.
packed into the round. At least if we're looking at like modern day non-sci-fi rounds,
Mhm.
then yeah, it doesn't make sense. Question for you: what if the so we're gonna go really deep here, and we're gonna go down the rabbit hole. What would happen if you shot a Beskar slug thrower at a Jedi?
That's a great question. I think it probably would just come down to a conservation of momentum equation. And with a such a like, we'll assume that the shape of a lightsaber is completely round. So hitting a cylinder with that, we're going to assume that the cylinder, in this case, the plasma cylinder, isn't going to be able to transfer enough heat and energy into the Beskar round, or slug in this case, to really change states at all. It's going to stay in its metal form, and we see that Beskar can actually block and contact with a lightsaber without losing its shape. So the entire Beskar round is essentially going to hit the cylinder of the lightsaber, and it's going to act like if you were to throw something at like a big metal pole. If you hit it dead on, like, it's going to bounce straight back on you. But because that quote unquote dead on angle is so what you're actually going to see is the Beskar shell would actually deflect off of one side of the lightsaber, and depending on where it's blocked, the closer to the center of the lightsaber it is, the wider an angle it's going to glance off. But if someone was able to just like barely touch it with their lightsaber, it would actually probably glance off, and then could like go into their shoulder and cause a devastating wound to the Jedi. It's very unlikely that these would be able to be deflected directly back to the person who's shooting them without an intense level of skill. One thing we do want to point out, though, is that a kinetic weapon like a Beskar slug or a scatter thrower,
I was going to say, God forbid it's scatter shot made of Beskar, then they're totally screwed.
well, if they tried to use just a lightsaber, yes. So this would be incredibly effective at killing Padawans, younglings, and potentially knights who aren't as skilled. But I think that momentary glimpse into the future that Jedi are granted, they would see that trying to block it with a lightsaber wouldn't work. So probably what they would do is they would use the Force itself to just stop the kinetic projectile. Yoda would be able to take care of this no problem. A scattergun would not be able to take out someone like Yoda. It's not. He would just be like, "The dude, this is nothing."
Well, and let's take a little bit of let's mix worlds a little bit and
Sure.
say, if a master is able to predict that, see it, stop it, If you're familiar with the Aragon series, part of what makes those magicians so dangerous is everything has to conserve energy, right? They follow weird, they just they decide to follow some weird laws of physics when also magic is involved. So energy has to be conserved. So for example, these tiny little objects can actually be accelerated to great speeds, because that's essentially how like bullets work. It's like if you throw something huge at somebody, you need that much energy to get it going that quickly to move. But if it's really, really small, you can get the speed up, the velocity up, so that the force is just completely in your favor. So the Jedi essentially could take all those shots, and now they have a scatter gun via the force, and then they could direct those back, say, and maybe even take out multiple enemies if the Jedi are strong enough. If they are, and if they're worried about preserving other people, I don't really know, but that could be easily used, in my opinion, as a weapon against somebody using a Beskar slug thrower. Because if they just like grabbed it and threw it back, like what are they going to do? Like if it's shooting against Beskar on Beskar, you just have to get it going fast enough where it's going to overwhelm the armor integrity of the wearer. Or just use some accuracy and hit them between plates, things like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we see this in modern day machining as well, where we see, well, how do you cut steel? You use steel. You use a special kind of steel. It's called high speed steel. But I mean, that's exactly what we see. Steel can cut steel. You wouldn't use aluminum to cut aluminum. You would use still steel to cut aluminum because steel is readily available.
That's fair.
You wouldn't use. I don't think aluminum end mills exist. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
But like we see in the Mandalorian, not everyone has the same quality of armor that the Mando has. Like he probably has the purest set of Beskar armor to show up in thousands of years.
Oh, for sure.
Like that's why he can basically act as recklessly as he wants, is because he hit the jackpot. Like his armor is not the typical scenario for most Mandalorians. His is a much bigger set of armor. It's obviously 100% pure Beskar. We see a lot of other people's armor. It's not as fully encompassing. We see like the shoulder pauldrons of someone like Bo-Katan. The armor pieces are a lot smaller. And so while it still probably would protect from blaster shots, because it's smaller, there's more opportunity for that energy to get dispersed into the weak points of the armor, or for the armor just to not deflect it at all if you can hit between the gaps. So I think really only, to loop back on your question, I think really only the Mandalorian's armor would be able to protect against a Beskar slug. I think if somebody truly created a slug thrower shooting Beskar ammo, they could just decimate the Mandalorians. Similar to kind of how that energy weapon in Star Wars Rebels only conducted to the Beskar in people's armor, and basically they electrified the Mandalorian people to death inside their own armor.
That's a big regret from Sabine Wren, making a weapon that basically could be targeted on her own people, which she very much laments in the series. So,
and thankfully destroys the only piece of technology they had, and apparently the records of how to build it. I actually think the vault on Scarif probably had a copy of how to make this weapon, because it was
doesn't matter now.
Doesn't matter now because they blew it up. But yeah, I'm wondering how much technology was actually destroyed at the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One.
Probably a lot. A lot of information got lost.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the least favorite parts of our show.
Go ahead and start us off.
So, one thing that the Bad Batch kind of in general really, I think, struggles with is its combat choreography, i.e., there's Stormtrooper syndrome all over the place. We have a lot of footage of the Bad Batch basically charging straight into enemy lines without taking hits and just mowing people down. If you've had any experience firing a weapon, whether with a real projectile or like a paintball gun, it's very difficult to shoot and run. I actually think I actually think it would be really fun to do a series where we replicate Star Wars battle scenes and see how it would go down. With like, obviously non-lethal projectiles like paintball guns or even like airsoft guns, like set up.
I'd be down.
I think it'd be really fun
For science.
for science. Um, and the thing is it's also really easy to gun someone down who's running straight at you.
It is.
Advantages to the Bad Batch's kind of really aggressive charge tactics is that when charging an untrained enemy, this could be a huge hit to morale if you just run straight at them and show no fear, because they'll just scatter. They'll be like, absolutely not. These people are crazy. I'm not going to do this. It's kind of like the berserker effect where people would just like, take some psychotropic rage drug and then run at their enemies with 2 battle axes. And they'd be like, am I really getting paid enough to fight this absolute madman? No, I am not.
No, I am not. Let's run. Yeah, it's breaking the morale of the enemy before you actually defeat them.
Yeah. Disadvantages to this: if you are fighting a trained opponent, you just walked into a killing field. This is basically how all of World War I turned out. We saw huge soldier charges who were summarily cut down by disciplined machine gun fire. Because you have one guy who's like, okay, well, I have 300 rounds of ammunition. I'm in cover, and you're not close to me. Dead. And we see this exact thing happen in the Clone Wars, where we see a super disciplined fighting force, i.e. the Grand Army of the Republic, i.e. the clones, fought against literal hordes of droids walking in formation towards them. Things like the Battle of Christophsis and the Second Battle of Geonosis, the Republic is able to hold their ground with a significantly smaller fighting force because they're not just walking out into the open in disciplined ranks. And they do a lot of damage. The opposite is also true when the clones fight in the Battle of Umbara. They fight against a non-droid enemy, and it is an absolute slugfest. The Umbarans really delve deep into kind of a guerrilla-style warfare, which, as American history has showed us, you don't win fights against guerrilla tactics. You just never do.
And yeah, they're pretty brutal. And the Umbaran campaign is a brutal one.
It's one of the best arcs in the Clone Wars series in its entirety. I think almost better than the Battle of Mandalore, in my opinion, or the execution of Order 66. I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
But we see that the Umbarans, who are not droids, they're able to hold off both the 501st and the 212th Attack Battalion, some of the 2 most decorated and successful battalions in the Clone Wars, led by Anakin Skywalker and General Kenobi.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they suffered a lot of losses. So I think my least favorite part of this episode was really just like kind of a continuity error, because I actually really liked this episode, even though it was filler. Like, I love the Wookiees. I was like, again, this is 7 out of 10. This is probably one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. I didn't like that they referred, this is me being really nitpicky, so for all of our listeners, you can be like, Nathan's a nitpick, like put that in the comments. I'll love you forever, like Papa Keys, all that fun things. But the fact that they referred to the Trandoshan escorted flame takes as Imperial tanks, I felt like was super lazy. They specifically say, oh, they've got Imperial tanks, and these are obviously these are just repurposed tanks from the Clone Wars. Like, and from the Separatist side, these are not Imperial tanks. And this is something we have no record of the Empire or the Republic doing, is repurposing Separatist technology to fight their own battles. And they're like, they're Imperial tanks. And I'm like, no, just call it a flame tank. Like, hey, they've got tanks. Like, it's not Imperial at that point. There are Imperial clones. They're helping the Trandoshans, but they're not Imperial. So that was my only thing. It's very nitpicky. You guys can, again, call me a nitpick in the comments. I'll love you forever. Let's get into the news, because we got some Warhammer news coming up. That being said, overall impressions of this episode: we love Kashyyyk, we love Wookiees, we love Gunji. Super good filler episode from the Bad Batch Season 2. We're just going to keep on rolling. Andrew, start us off with your Warhammer news.
More Kashyyyk, please and thank you. Okay, Warhammer news. It is basically confirmed at this point that the Lion, Mr. Lionel Johnson, that is his real name. I didn't make it up. I know it's dumb, but he's probably coming to Warhammer. He is one of the Primarchs of. He's actually the Primarch of the First Legion, or he's actually the Primarch of the First Legion, the Dark Angels, which is the army I play as. So I am so excited to have this dorky sounding named commander on my battlefield, because they are what's known as Lords of War, which I think is super cool. For those of you who don't play Warhammer, there's a lot of rule of cool stuff going on.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very epic, and I think that's really what I really like about it.
100%. So excited. And then you can play your Primarch against my Gazgul, and we can do a one-on-one fight, and we can see who wins.
That'd be so fun. And then one of our other buddies has the Shard of the Nightbringer for his Necron army, which is a very good model. Do both of your commanders have damage phase caps?
Yes, but his commander has a weapon that ignores phase caps. So in a one-on-one fight, Gaz loses every time.
That's such like a children's playground move, where you're like pretending and you're like, well, I have a shield. It's like, well, I have a weapon that goes through shields. It's like, you can't do that.
This is so dumb.
I'm taking my ball and going home. Mom!
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like super annoying, but plus like the Nightbringer is just super good. Did we end up killing him last time? Did we end up getting him off the board?
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah, so this is one of my projects right here, which is Gaz. He's still very unpainted. All the black areas basically need to be spruced up, but he's done okay. He's a really good commander, and he allows me to do the Great Wa, which means I can do Speed Was and Wa at the same time. It's fantastic. Anyways, gotcha. Take us into some Brutalis Dreadnought action.
So Games Workshop did a really weird thing where so Strike Force Agastus, which is just a box set that they're coming out, one of the units in it is the Brutalis Dreadnought. It's easily the coolest model in that box by a lot. And they did a mock battle between this Brutalis Dreadnought and other mech type units, where they actually like pitted them against each other, and they actually like rolled off and saw who won. But a lot of people quickly pointed out that Games Workshop kind of fudged the numbers. And they gave a lot of the opponents really bad war gear, and sometimes didn't also account for what's called the Duty Eternal rule that all dreadnoughts have, which is just -1 damage every time they take damage, which is really good. Taking less damage is typically a good thing in a game where you're fighting other things.
That's super broken, but all right.
Well, it's, in my opinion, it's not as good as an invulnerable save, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But thankfully, so Games Workshop totally screwed this up, but thankfully, the patron saint of Warhammer Statistics, who we shouted out on the channel before, Auspex Tactics. If you play Warhammer, please subscribe to Auspex Tactics on YouTube. I don't know this guy, but he puts out the best content on Warhammer 40,000 strategy. He did his own analysis. He did his own analysis with the best kits for this occasion, and he basically redid the fights. So the Brutalis Dreadnought went up against the Tyrannid Carnifex, the Orc Death Dread, which you have one, a Chaos Mauler Fiend, and also a Chaos Knight War Dog Stalker. What a mouthful. Which, sort of side note, I totally think the Dark Mechanicum is going to be a playable faction in 10th edition. So let's put that down on our theory list. But anyway,
all right.
Here's how the numbers went out. So he used an actual statistical approach to it. So he didn't actually just do a one-off roll. Basically, a lot of these units could one-shot the other unit. So basically, it just comes down to whoever goes first. But if you actually do a statistical analysis, you could see, okay, versus this stat line for this stat line, this is statistically who is going to do more damage and in which phase, and you can more objectively see who is going to be the winner most of the time instead of who is going to be winner just this one time. So it's honestly, in my opinion, it's a much more valid comparison of characters to do a statistical analysis than a one-off roll. Anyway, nerd stuff aside. So the Brutalis Dreadnought, which it's like this big dude with claws and he's got like melta-guns on his chest. Like he's honestly, he looks super overpowered, but he goes up against this thing called Tyranid Carnifex. I'm not going to describe it because I don't really understand Tyranid lore all that much. The Brutalis wins at doing 199% damage. And this is after weighting the points. These models aren't the same amount of points. The Dreadnought's probably going to come out at about 200 points. We don't know how much. The Carnifex is like less than 100. So like, yeah, on a 1-to-1 roll off, of course, the bigger model with the more points is going to win because it's more expensive. And that's why it's more expensive, is because it's more powerful. But when you weight the points, so you compare the damage that they do and then multiply the weaker character by a certain coefficient to then equal the points of the Brutalis Dreadnought, and it raises the amount of damage it does. In comparison, the Brutalis still wins at a 199% win rate. It basically can kill 2 Carnifexes over. If you were to scale
that was going to be my question in the stats, is how do you win 199% of the time?
Yeah,
so if there was 2 Carnifexes, it would still win almost 100% of the time.
Yes. That's if the Carnifexes were the same power as the Dreadnought. The Carnifex actually isn't the same power as the Dreadnought. It's significantly weaker. So a Brutalis Dreadnought, if it was able to perfectly change its attacks, would be able to kill between 3 and 4 Tyranid Carnifexes in one turn.
Wow.
It's a very strong unit. It's a lot of points, but it's a very strong unit. Anyway, so that's a lot of... But we're going to only be talking about weighted scores moving forward. Hopefully I explained that well enough. If you guys have more questions about the math about that, I can do a quick short explaining how the math on that works, because I like math. Math is fun. Math is why I have a job. Anyway, we're going to move forward. The Brutalis against the Death Dread, which is the mech that you have, wins at 188% damage after weighting the points. Oh, no! He dropped it! He dropped this model. Is it okay? Did you just break it?
It's fine. Nothing a little bit of glue won't fix.
Oh, no.
So the legs aren't attached, and neither are the arms, but I had a piece. My flame cannon claw came off, but that's actually an easy fix. So I will go through and start trimming that up a little bit later. Anyways, go ahead.
That was terrifying.
I'm sorry I derailed you.
So one encounter that's really interesting to point out is that the Mauler Fiend, which is the closest point value to the Brutalis Dreadnought, after it had been in a straight 1-to-1 fight, the Brutalis Dreadnought still wins. However, if the Mauler Fiend were to go first, it could have the chance of one-shotting the Brutalis Dreadnought, even with Duty Eternal. And after weighting the points, the Brutalis Dreadnought actually loses at a rate of 129% damage. So it's about 1.25% overkill if the Mauler Fiend was the exact same power and point level as the Brutalis Dreadnought, which this is directly contrary to what Games Workshop showed. You know, Games Workshop, they're like, yeah, of course, like the Brutalis Dreadnought wins against the Mauler Fiend. And it's like, it's not actually that good. And for a lot of these units, they just didn't give them the best war gear.
Yeah.
And they gave the Brutalis the best.
It's best war gear. Yeah, they're trying to essentially upsell their product, which is fine. Like, that's what you're there to do. But like, also, most of us aren't idiots, and we know how stats work, and you can basically get a stat to say whatever you want as long as you just don't tell people the details. Like, hey, your sample size is small and your standard deviation sucks. Like,
and therefore your conclusion should be ignored. But like, not everyone has that level of statistical background. Or if they just weren't paying attention enough, you know, like I watch YouTube videos and I do other things at the same time. So if I'm just listening to this showdown in the background, I might be very inclined to think that the Brutalis Dreadnought is an invincible juggernaut of death. And I'll absolutely spend $200 to get this box set, just to get this unit.
That's really expensive.
So, and that's why we're bringing this up, is because I really want people to make an informed and educated decision. I'm not going to buy Strike Force Agastus. I can't really justify spending that much money on plastic, but I am really trying to get my hands on a secondhand version of the Brutalis Dreadnought, and hopefully not for a lot of money. We'll see.
Yeah, good luck.
So this has been a long news segment. So thank you guys for sticking through. The last matchup that came through was the Brutalis Dreadnought versus the Chaos Knight War Dog Stalker. So the Chaos Knight range has knights that are maybe just a little bit bigger than the Redemptor or the Brutalis Dreadnought. So a decently sized model of like probably a 150 millimeter base to everything is like just barely smaller than a Warhound Titan, which is, as it probably sounds, pretty big. Like bigger than my head. Certainly more expensive than my head. I don't think my brain could sell for as much as a Warhound Titan costs. I don't really know what black market brains sell for. Anyway, the Brutalis Dreadnought wins that fight at 133% damage after weighting the points.
So at the time of this recording, episode 10 of the Bad Batch has already been released. So by the time this actually gets out, 11 and 12 will also be on the air as well. So something you guys are going to be seeing from us is we're actually going to be going through compiling all of our theories and start to see who is wrong, who is right. And we'll be putting that out hopefully in some other videos as well, which actually means yours truly, Editor Supreme, will be putting together all of those clips and making sure that they actually make sense. So by this time, we've also got 6 episodes of The Last of Us out as well. An absolutely phenomenal series based on the zombie survival video game. Pedro Pascal continues to win over the hearts of nerds everywhere. Check that out, guys. We really recommend it. Mando Season 3 will have also premiered by the start of this episode. We will be covering that in a future episode. We're absolutely going to go through all of the Mando episodes with enough delay to give you all the time to watch it, avoiding spoilers for as long as we can. Another piece of news we have, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide gets its first big update with which reportedly fixes the loot system. In patch 4, quote, Blessings of the Omnissiah, players can now create 5 different loadouts, a system that most players are used to having at this point, with different cosmetics, weapons, and talents. Many changes came with this patch, along with a buff to weapon blessings as well. Contracts are now more rewarding, missions give more items, and the worst contracts of the game had to offer have been removed. So a lot of big patch notes in this one. This is considered one of the first big update of the game. So make sure you guys have that all downloaded. If you guys play Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, get that installed and check them out. Let us know how you guys like it.
Darktide is such a fun game, and I really am looking forward to the console release because at this point, my Xbox is stronger than my PC, so really looking forward to that.
There you go.
Play it on my big 4K TV.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for stopping by this episode of Talk About Tatooine. We're super happy you guys made it all the way through. We're really scouring the internet for all the different news pieces and stuff that we can talk about. Make sure you guys watch the Bad Batch. Comment on our theories. Let us know if you think they're garbage or if you're like, I think they're onto something. We'd love to hear more discourse from you guys. You guys, the fans, Star Wars and Warhammer have done an absolutely fantastic job at just being super awesome communities. We're really excited to interact with you guys some more. That being said, make sure you guys support us in the easiest ways possible. Like, comment, subscribe, listen to our videos. We really want that watch time right now. We want to see that engagement. That's going to be super helpful for us. You guys can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We do a lot of shorts. We do all these in videos as well. The podcast version available on Google Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify. Make sure you guys find us there. Follow us, share it with a friend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Close your eyes.